Good morning and welcome to another session of Spark Shift Succeed. I am Melissa Tsodetse and I have the pleasure of being your host from Unique Speaker Bureau International. I want to start off today with a question for all of you. When was the last time you challenged your own thinking about what's possible? This is more than just a rhetorical question. It is an invitation to open your mind, to embrace change, and to step into the unknown with confidence. Today isn't simply another session on your calendar. It is a curated experience designed to spark a new way of thinking, shift old assumptions, and equip you with the courage and insight to succeed in business, leadership, and in life. Our speaker today, Colin Ilse. Colin is a futurist and innovation catalyst, someone who doesn't just talk about change, but helps organizations and leaders harness it. His work bridges strategy, foresight, digital transformation, and leadership, enabling leaders to see opportunities where others see uncertainty. He partners with organizations to rethink growth, to challenge conventional leadership models, and to unlock innovation that propels teams and industries ahead of their time. His global experience and uniquely African-rooted insights make his perspectives both powerful and deeply relevant to where we are and where we're going. So get ready to unlock new thinking, to question what's possible, and to walk away with inspiration that will fuel your next bold step. It is my pleasure to introduce a speaker who will help us all ignite that shift and succeed with intention. Please help me welcome Colin Ilse.
Thank you very much. That's an inspirational welcome. I love it, I'm waiting, if this is on stage. I think there's a huge applause, so I can feel it. Let's get started. We've got 20 minutes. Please do ask questions on the chat. We'll try to answer as many as possible if we have time. And obviously after this, you're welcome to reach out and ask questions. Please challenge what I say. These are as much opinion as they are fact. I could be wrong. It's been known. It's happened before. I don't know if I am. And when we're talking about the future, obviously, you have to challenge, because actually most of this presentation today is about a view of the future. And the core question really I'm putting to you is, what do you think the future is? It's the key to business today. And we'll go into that in just a second. On the back of the intro, and there's not much more to, I can add to it. It was such a good intro. I mean, this thing, hold on, sorry. I need my PowerPoint to work. Right, so about me. So I spend a lot of time doing presentations and keynotes. I also work with a group called the Chisel Group, which is really a bunch of consultancy guys that are sitting at the forefront of AI and machine learning. I'm the head of growth, and it really gives me the advantage of actually seeing what's happening right in the coalface. I'm also very, very privileged to be working with AWS and Silicon Overdrive and hosting my own series where I get to interview the founders and leaders of some of the fastest growing companies in Africa. So companies like Capitec, they're coming up, and companies in the past like Clickatel, for example, TimeBank, really any of the companies that are being driven by innovation and technology and transforming the markets and places they operate in. This again gives me fantastic insight in terms of leadership and the possibility that's out there if you have the right mentality, the right strategy, and of course a little bit of luck on the way. Let's start with a question. Put yourselves up a few years. I'm assuming everyone on the call is working in some sort of business or another. Ask yourself this: how did you go bankrupt? Okay. Seems a bit negative to start with this, but how did you go bankrupt? And I like that question because pretty much every company at some point is going to go bankrupt. You can't succeed. Most companies die. I mean, there's plenty of stats out there that are showing how large organizations that have been around for decades, intergenerational, are actually starting to die. Okay, and this is accelerating because we're seeing new technologies coming in which are transforming whole markets. And I love the Hemingway answer: how did you go bankrupt? Two ways: gradually, then suddenly. And that's typically what we see. Blockbusters, use that as an example. How did they go bankrupt? They failed to predict what was going to happen in their market. They didn't see the threat of Netflix. What happened to Kodak? They didn't see the threat that the digital camera that they'd invented would have. And so when you think about how companies do go bankrupt, okay, it's always because the market shifts. If the market shifts, it starves you of your business. Whatever problem you were solving beforehand has just been taken away from you. And for me, that's what makes this, first kind of thought process about what the future holds so critically important. Before you talk about culture and strategy, how you should go and actually adopt AI, whatever it is that you should be doing in your organization, you can't go through that thought process until you've started really deeply thinking forward. And I suppose asking yourself a question about how is my marketplace going to change? And then perhaps as a second question, how quickly? The master of this is this guy.
And what is your claim to fame?
I'm the founder of Amazon.com.
Where did you get an idea for Amazon.com?
Well, 3 years ago, I was in New York City working for a quantitative hedge fund when I came across the startling statistic that web usage was growing at 2,300% a year. So I decided I would try and find a business plan that made sense in the context of that growth. And I picked books as the first best product to sell online, after making a list of like 20 different products.
So that's obviously Bezos. Did the sound come through okay on the video? Lovely. And the stat that I hope that you picked up was that he'd identified that the internet at that time was growing at 2,300% per annum. All right. That to me is the genius of Bezos and what's happened at Amazon for the last 20 or 30 years. Their ability to consistently pick and bet on where they're seeing transformational change. This happened again later on when they started to get behind Amazon Web Services. They were able to see how cloud computing was going at an exponential rate. They picked it, they bet on it, they doubled down. And therefore, unsurprisingly, they've been able to go and pick these winners. They've had plenty of losers. I mean, they've done lots of things which have made no money at all. But if you can get 6, 7 of those predictions in 10, maybe 6 or 7 in 20, geez, if it's a private portfolio and you're investing into startups, it can be as little as 5% of your bets that are actually working, as long as you are betting. And that's what Amazon and Bezos have done incredibly well. Look to the future, think what's moving quickly, and double down on it. And for the books, obviously, they saw the internet was going up at this 2,300%. They asked the second question, how can we monetize that? And he came up with the idea of this homogenous product called books, which he thought would be relatively easy to ship and there may be demand for. So I suppose for me, the question is, what is changing and how fast is it changing? Is it exponential? And this question of exponentialism is again something which is really difficult to get through your brains. I find it difficult every single day. Linear growth, where we go and, improve by 3 or 4 basis points or percentage points every year, easy to go and see. Stable industries. Most people I talk to are working in stable industries. I'm in insurance, I'm in mining, I'm in banking, okay? They've been kind of similar for the last 20 or 30 years. And then if you're in a stable industry, it's quite easy to come up with stable strategies. Have a look at your numbers from the last couple of years, think a little bit about some macroeconomics, make a few tweaks, buy a few other companies, and hey, presto, there's your strategy, done and dusted. That's incredibly difficult to do if you think things are changing exponentially, because intuitively, it just doesn't make any sense. If I think about this as a kind of an analogy or an example, go and take 30 steps, you go 30 meters, double your step every time you go around the world 26 times. What's that got to do with thinking forward about where we are going? Well, absolutely everything. Because when I look at what's been rolled out over the last couple of years, everything is going at an exponential rate. 2003, ChatGPT, it's transformational, okay? If I'm using the analogy to put it in simple terms, because the complex terms that they use in the tech side of things are actually meaningless gibberish. I don't know what it means. But in simple terms, if I'm reading a book as a human 24/7, GPT-3 was able to go and compete with me in 1,200 years of non-stop reading. That was version 1 with all of its hallucinations. Now scale that up to GPT-4. Hallucinations are reducing, it's becoming accurate, it's winning a lot of the tests out there. Now it's got 12,000 years of reading for every day that I do. GPT-5 is 1,000,000 years. We can't compete with these technologies. They know more, they are more intuitive, they're able to rationalize and reason. And as the algorithms get better, the training improves, the investment continues to double down. The opportunities that we're going to have on this are absolutely incredible. And I, for one, seriously have to think about whether we're going to reach this utopia of the singularity. Are we going to get to this point where basically computers can think and rationalize better than humans? They make their own determinations. I don't see why not. Artificial general intelligence feels like it's something we're stepping towards. And this, of course, is supported by lots of other exponentials. The cost of chips continues to go down with Moore's law. Okay, this is a representation of that doubling every year that's just been put on an exponential chart. It doesn't look great, but if you go and put it on a normal scale and think about what's happening, basically it's telling us that to 2016 to 2018, we made more progress in the speed of compute than we'd ever done in history. That again is going to continue and is continuing. There's nothing to suggest that our ability to process data isn't just getting faster and faster at a ridiculous rates. More processing, more cloud, 5G is coming down in price. Solar's starting to make it more accessible for people around the world in terms of cost of getting access to these technologies. Phones and tablets are coming down. I think in India you can now get smartphones for about $10. So when you think about this circular effect, you get this amplification of all these different technologies. There's nothing that I can see that is going to be stepping back and stopping us from actually continuing to make more progress at an accelerated rate. And I think the stock markets are kind of backing me up on this. If you look at the bets that are in town, AI, it's AI. I don't think you can invest in an index fund or a tracker fund, which the vast majority of those stocks are not AI dependent on. These are top weighted companies in the S&P 500. Just think about it. Microsoft, Apple, Alphabet, Amazon, Nvidia. And then your next set of companies, even JP Morgan, although that's a bank, is being bet on because they see the benefits of AI in terms of how it can improve margins and accelerate its offering. It's AI everywhere. Venture capital. At the moment, when you look in the US, this chart is a little bit old. 80% of bets from venture capital are in companies that are directly building AI solutions. It's just remarkable. 80%. And when they're betting, we've got Nvidia, obviously. Nvidia, no one had heard of Nvidia, I'd have said 3 years ago, if they're not in the tech world. Then it hits $5 trillion. And in turn is investing in its customers, which I think is kind of interesting from an accountancy perspective, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. But it's a company investing in its customers so they can afford to buy the H200s and the in-pipeline chips that are being developed here. Every single person that you look at in the industry is betting on this. And if you think it's something which is going to explode and you're going to find it was like the internet bets of the early 2000s, just remember this. Those internet bets on dark fiber, where we saw the massive crash, was a huge oversupply. And they called it, dark fiber because it was being laid and it wasn't being utilized. So everything fell apart. It took 5 or 10 years before we saw the recovery. We're not seeing that in terms of what's happening with AI. There is peak demand. They cannot keep up with the supply for chips. If you've ever used Chat or Claude at the moment, you're probably going to face that you get restricted because there are too many people globally using these platforms and there is not enough bandwidth and there's not enough compute available today. So expect many more data centers, huge amounts of electricity being used. This is a juggernaut which seems a little bit unstoppable at the moment. This is without doubt the gold rush of all gold rushes. And we can see it across all these different sectors. If you go and have a look at the kind of companies that are being started, I recommend you look at things like CB Insight or First Mark. You can see where the smart money is going. AI company after AI company. What are we actually betting on? Is it overhyped? Yeah, I think that's kind of an interesting question. It could be overhyped, right? And the reason that I think that is on this particular chart, I mean, this is saying that the global AI market might go up to, $2 trillion. If it does that, it's not overhyped. But what would be driving that? Well, lots of people are using ChatGPT, but let's be honest, most are on the free account. That's not paying its bills. ChatGPT is massively loss-making. On the one hand, they're talking about listing to raise money. On the other hand, commentators are saying maybe they go bust in the next year or so, because they are not generating the amount of revenue needed to sustain what they're actually doing. The one area that is also being flagged about AI is obviously software as a service. And people are saying, no, don't worry, Cole, because we can invest into software as a service. This is what AI is going to do. It's going to be the new SAP. It's going to be the new PeopleSoft. It's going to be the new, you just pick whatever vendor it is that you're using in your corporation. And it's fair enough, but it cannot be the end goal because that's a 300 billion market in the US, about $450 billion globally. And the valuations that we're seeing are certainly not based on just replacing the current SaaS market. Salesforce being updated with AI is not going to, reflect that valuation that's coming through from NVIDIA. So what is it? What is it that people are actually betting on and going for? Well, it's sad. Okay, those software as a services are filing cabinets, but they're supporting the US labor market, the global labor market, right? And that's a different kettle of fish entirely, because in the US alone, you're talking about $14 trillion of wages that are paid out for salaries every single year. And if you're a company and you've got access to AI and you've got some really clever people and you can work out how to go and replace labor, that's when the valuations start to really come through. So I don't want to be overly negative, but we have to be realistic and say, this is where the smart money is going. And we've got plenty of evidence that they're starting to have impact there. If you follow the newspapers recently, I think it was Oracle that have just said they're removing 30,000 people from their workforce. And they're not the only people that have been doing that. The owners of Square have said they're cutting down to 40% of their workforce. Time and again, we're seeing the advancing companies reflect this. One of the big law firms out there has said they're cutting back on 20% of their workforce. So like it or not is really irrelevant. You have to make a decision and think about your market, your business, and consider what the implications of AI are going to be. Is this realistic? Can we really imagine large swathes of roles being taken out? Well, I don't know. 2025 was the year of AI agents. Sam Altman and many others were talking about them. Unless you've been living under a rock, I don't know. You've probably heard real recently of OpenClaw. OpenClaw is exactly what Sam was referring to when he talked about AI agents, a platform where you can basically set it off, ask it a question, tell it to solve something for you, and it will go and do it. I used a variation of OpenClaw just the other day to make my own CRM. I didn't want to have to pay the $20 for HubSpot and everything else, so I worked with a platform like OpenClaw to go and create something for me. This is my business, I told it. Please have a look at all the files, have a look at all my emails, I asked it, and then said, now go and create a CRM platform, a sales platform to help me to do outreach. Not a single piece of code written by me, a complete system built by artificial intelligence with literally about 4 or 5 prompts from my side, and I'm actually using it pretty much every day at the moment. And we're still on day 1. So this idea of agentic agents, I don't think we've got time to go into it. We're now reaching that stage, though. It's not just a research tool where you ask it to help you on something, help me to go and research some facts for this presentation. It's now becoming an employee. And to put that in perspective, I employed my first AI employee last week. I went out to the shops, I bought myself a Mac Mini, I've installed Claude Cowork and the other assets that come with Claude. I've given it its own environment to work in, and I now talk to it. Every day I get up, I use Whisper to go and help with the conversion of my speech into decent text and to give it intuition and context. I'm training the models to say, this is the stuff I'm interested in, this is the skills I want you to learn. And it feels as almost like I've got myself a 25-year grad student with 2 years of experience who's now helping me to do my day-to-day work. I don't know what industry everyone on the call is in, but it is going to have an impact. How you see that impact as to whether it's positive or negative, I guess, is something which you guys are going to have to determine. But I go back to what I said at the start. You've got to make a decision about the impact of these technologies and how it's going to change your industry. And you've got to make that second step to say, how fast is that change going to occur? Because if you can't do that, then you will get left behind. You will be sitting there at that barbecue in a couple of years' time with that Ernest Hemingway statement saying, how did you go bankrupt? And I don't know if it's going to be slowly, then suddenly things seem to have been accelerating quite quickly recently. So I'm not going to go through the rest. I think what I want to do, and there's plenty of other examples there, nice funny pictures. I want to kind of leave you with some thoughts around it. There's lots of other things that, people come up and they ask questions really. They say, how do you guys survive in this? And my answer is kind of the same as it was 5 years ago. It's the same as it was 20 years ago. Obviously ask this question about whether you believe the world is exponential. And if you're not sure, better to hedge your bets and assume that it is. And I think there's 4 characteristics that the great leaders are actually showing time and time again are how they navigate this kind of weird world that we're living in. And the first is just finding purpose. It's just going to take 2 minutes to go through this. Find purpose. Put another way, look for problems. Technology is a solution. It's enabled by problems. Whatever your business, you're not going to find the answers talking to your colleagues sitting there in your offices. You're going to have to get out. You're going to have to go searching. You're going to have to network and find new experiences, new examples to look for new problems. It's not enough just to go and, just ask your clients. Clients didn't come up and say, I'm unhappy with my phone and I want to, develop a touchscreen multi-purpose computer, which I can just replace my alarm clock, my phone, my email, my everything in what became the iPhone and the other variations from the Android guys. It wasn't developed by us sitting in our corporates. It's finding problems. And there's so many problems out there. I mean, it doesn't matter what you look at. I mean, we're here in South Africa. There's so many problems. Globally, there's so many problems. We will not run out of problems. And so the doomsayers that think that AI is just going to solve everything, they're just missing a fairly significant point. There are more problems that are out there that we haven't even thought of than there are ones that I think we've solved over the last 100 years or so. So find purpose, find problems, and obviously to do that, be curious. You can't do this just by doing what you did the other day. Take risk, run experiments. Don't associate with the people that are kind of narrow in their views. Look for the people that challenge you. Get out there, okay? This is where you're going to find the Einsteins of the future. It's not going to be in your particular office space. And then once you've got this curiosity and you've got these ideas of these problems, run the experiments. It's not going to work. Fail many times. Don't fail in a way where you can't run more experiments. But if you're not running experiments, you're not curious. You're never going to go and find the solution on that first go. Just a simple example there. Blockbusters could have invested in Netflix for 5 million as an experiment, and they didn't. Google put down 50, and the rest is Android. In the two splits, Blockbusters, Netflix, Google, and Android. Why didn't Blockbusters invest? It was minuscule. They made $5 billion in that year and they didn't take an insignificant bet. Google, on the other hand, did. And then finally do it with courage, because obviously what I'm saying here is that you're asking you to do something which your peers aren't. You will be in the top 10%, maybe the 5%, if you start experimenting, if you start thinking about purpose and problems before you worry about profit and margin, and it will require courage. And I see those as kind of interlocked. Because to go and do this stuff, you've got to be passionate about it. You've got to believe in it. You can't just get up and just have courage because you're looking for an improvement of 2% in terms of margin. If you want to save the world, well, that's a different matter. Then you might actually be able to go and have the guts to stand up and realize you might fail. So that's it. That's really my kind of observations. My view, the world is changing at an exponential rate and it's getting faster. Expect 1,000 years of progress if you want to put it in numerical terms this century, whatever that means to you, okay? And on that basis, we've got to double down on looking for real genuine problems. I'm not too worried about how you monetize it, that will come. But if you can find problems and use AI and the existing tech to solve it, you're off to a great start, as opposed to trying to use AI just to resolve your existing margin and issues. And if you can find a problem that you're passionate about, that gives you the courage to actually double down and actually take risk, do something different to your colleagues, you might just about get there and have the ability to run the experiments, right? And there's plenty of companies, which is a separate talk we can go through in South Africa, that demonstrate this on a daily basis. So I leave you with that thought. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Colin, for taking the time to be with us today. I think we can all agree that Spark Shift Succeed just keeps on getting better and better. I think this time what really stands out is how much it resonates with the massive changes we're all facing, whether on a global scale or on our day-to-day lives. Colin, your insights today didn't just challenge us, they inspired us to rethink our roles as leaders, innovators, and change makers in this fast changing world. I particularly loved the real life scenarios you shared. They really brought your message home. And of course, you left us with a question that we all need to pause and reflect on. What is changing and how fast is it changing? As we process all the powerful ideas you've shared, it is clear that shifting and succeeding are not just trends, they are the mindset and actions that will define whether we thrive in the years ahead. Now, let's engage those on the call. We have a few comments from Brian, and I'll jump right in from our chatbot. Let's see. Thank you, Brian, for your engagement. Brian shared earlier on today, 74% of the workforce are millennials and Gen Zs. If you want your organization to survive, let alone thrive, you have to understand them properly. You have to identify them. You have to design the environment for them to thrive. And that's a great reflection, Brian. Thank you so much. Colin, we have a question from Paul, linking to the AI nuggets you shared. Does AI not lead to better decisions due to access to so much and more data and scenario planning?
So that's a really great question, and I almost did that as the presentation for today. I've literally just written this article for my column in Forbes, and my statement is no, absolutely not. I think it's so. My analogy was Captain Smith is on the foredeck of the Titanic, okay, and he's got all the information he needs. He knows that there's icebergs out there. He's being told on the radio frequency that icebergs have been seen, and yet he decides to ignore it. He knows that if they hit an iceberg, they are going to sink. He doesn't believe that they will survive that hit, but in his heart, he's going, "I'm at risk of losing my job. I'm at risk of looking like a complete idiot if I don't get us to New York on time as my paymasters have driven me to do." He had all the information. Could AI have changed anything? No. I mean, he could have been given the best AI tools. It would have told him all sorts of phenomenal things, but it would have only been representing what he already knew in maybe a slightly better way. And so I don't see how AI is going to necessarily improve decision making. I'll be controversial here. Sam Altman, he's got an AI company, and he took the decision that it was good to go and move a platform where we share our most intimate thoughts, and turning it into an advertising model. Are you wanting to go and use ChatGPT when you're worried they're going to use it to go and understand your characteristics so they can advertise and market to you? Do you want these personal thoughts having kind of, pop-ups there when you're sitting there in your office or in front of your family with these weird adverts that, kind of represent it's insane. I think it's an insane idea to go and do that. But he's got an AI company. You might disagree and think it's the best idea ever. Let's have a debate. AI isn't going to help us because it's a philosophy, decision. And so when I think about decision making and you dig into most of it, time and again, you come and realize it's decision making is not easy because it's not a right or wrong answer. It's more of a philosophy about what you're trying to achieve or do. And your heart and your emotions are what drive decision making. And then 99 times out of 100, we'll backfill it with facts and figures. And obviously, we'll use AI to do that. So I actually think it's going to be a false hope that decision making will get better. I think our leaders will continue thinking with their hearts, and their dangers and their biases will become pronunciated because they're able to use AI to go and support these ideas.
Thank you so much, Colin. Exceptional insights there. There's a follow-up one from Brian. Brian said, "We play in SaaS market and do not use AI. We focus on humans for humans and personal development, focusing on matters of the here and emotions, changing habits. AI cannot do this. AI is data, and fact is what we do with it that matters." So the question is not how do we make people fit the system? The question is how do we build a system that fits them? And that is where data must come in, because without data, everything we do is guesswork. Now his question, at what point do we park AI to actually address people problems?
How long do you have to go and, debate this one? So firstly, AI is never going to get parked. That genie's out of the bottle. I mean, this is like saying, going back 100 or 200 years and saying, let's just stop using oil. Okay, so, and what I mean by that is that the negative externalities of AI are obvious for all to see. Okay, I'll use one example. Without question, if you've watched Her, I think Her is already here. The movie, AI can manipulate how we think. We know that for the last 2 decades, a company that I passionately hate, which is Instagram or Facebook or Meta or whatever you want to go and call it, they've been able to prove that they can manipulate behavior. The evidence is there. And we had a first win, I think, in terms of the going to court and actually getting a 6 million payout, which hopefully opens the floodgates to these mega platforms who've just been literally able to get away with murder by presenting their algorithms to sell to people to encourage certain behaviors, of which a substantial percentage are unhealthy, leading to death, self-harm, drug addiction, depression, and so on and so on. So that was in the first type of AI with basic algorithms. Now you've got something that you can talk to. If you read books, was it Grisham? No, I can't remember who it was. A book recently come out, I think it's the author of The Lincoln Lawyer, going through what that court process, which actually has happened recently, where they've taken people to court to show how they've been manipulated by an AI bot to go and take certain sorts of behaviors. Okay, this is out. The US is running this, and we can't put that back. Those externalities are not owned by anyone, so society is going to have to pick it up. My personal view is that it's something which, unless we get government and society as a whole to start stepping in to try to do something on this, not much is going to happen about dealing with these negatives that are coming through at the moment. Unfortunately, I think it's a bit sad, and what makes it really hard is there's no borders here. I was happy to see, for example, in Australia that they've kind of limited access to certain platforms until you're 16 over. It's a start, but it's just Australia, and you put a VPN on it, it's kind of irrelevant. So unless we do something which is a bit like a United Nations in some format or another to try to go and get a hold of this and try to go and use AI for good, I think it's a kind of I'm not sure if I've answered your question, but it's going to require that level of interaction between leaders across the globe to do something material here. To avoid these negative challenges, amongst all the positives that we obviously get from this technology.
Thank you, Colin. Thank you so much for that. Paula also just shared a note for us. AI may be reducing tasks, but also intensifies work expectations. And Paula was kind enough to share an article by HBR on hbr.org. AI doesn't reduce work, it intensifies it. Thank you, Paula. We'll look into that as well. We do have a question from Paul, and it is the last question I will be taking. Paul is asking, which conferences do you have the maximum impact at? What kind of brief whets your appetite?
So, I got no idea, but thanks. There's a question I can't answer. You guys can answer that. You're the experts in this field. What I like to do though, as a sort of backhanded way into, I like to get people to think. So where there's an opportunity, if you stand up and you're just chatting to a bunch of people and you go off, that's fine. There's some really cool people out there, but if there's an opportunity to actually get people to think and do Q&A, right, and actually help them, by going in with a contrarian argument, being controversial, sharing the worst case to go and open the conversation about the best case or vice versa. Those are always the fun discussions, so audiences which are interested in trying to improve their organizations, their own personal lives, I think are always the interesting ones to do, because that's a very humane type of discussion to get up and running. It's nothing to do with AI or facts or stats. These are just props, to get people thinking about their own futures.
Thank you so much, Colin. You said that you should leave that to us. And I think you best fit where audiences are looking for a clearer vision of the future that we actually want to create. So, Paul, thank you very much for that question. I really believe that today marks the beginning of some big changes for all of us, both personally and professionally. Thank you once again for leading us, Colin, with such passion and purpose. Let's take this energy forward and continue our journey to shift and succeed. And before we go, I'd like to remind you to join us next week for an exciting session with Jane Gunn on critical thinking in business and life. Thank you once again, and see you at 9 a.m. next week, 20th of April, South African time, 9 a.m. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye-bye.